In a society where the intersections of race, body and violence are often shrouded in silence and euphemism, Dreamscape dares to confront the truth head-on. This unflinching production, written by Prof Rickerby Hinds and presented by University of Johannesburg's Arts and Culture, it's in partnership with the University of California, really offers a powerfully clear-eyed examination of the relationships between race, the body and violence. So through the initiative, fusions of hip-hop, spoken word and physical theatre, Dreamscape shines a spotlight on the complexities and often fraught dynamics that shape our lives, inviting us to bear witness, to confront, as well as to heal and transform at large. So to tell us a little bit more about the play, we are joined in studio by Dreamscape playwriter Prof Rickerby Hinds and head of UJ Arts and Culture, Pieter Jacobs. Good morning to the both of you.
Good morning.
Thanks for your time at this hour.
Absolutely.
Prof Rickerby, let me start with you. The inspiration behind, Dreamscape.
Yes.
What inspired that for you?
This is based on an incident. Dreamscape is based on an incident that happened in Riverside, California, which is about 65 miles east of Los Angeles. So that's the way I contextualize it. And the incident happened in 1998. And I was reluctant. This is one of my plays that I was reluctant to write. It wasn't a play that I wanted to write for two reasons. One, I didn't want to feel like I was capitalizing on something so horrific. And two, I didn't think I had the talent to tell the story in a way it deserved to be told. However, these types of incidents continue to happen in the U.S. And about 4 or 5 years later, I decided I needed to say something as an artist. And so I began to research on Dreamscape. And I don't want to say the play wrote itself, but it was one of those projects that when I started doing the research and working on it, it just really flowed in a fairly easy way because the research and the information that I had on the incident just told me this is how the story should be told and this is who should be involved with the story.
So you became a vessel of sorts.
Absolutely, and that doesn't happen a lot for us playwrights. When it happens, I get nervous because I think, is this the only time it's going to happen, and how difficult will the next one be? But it really was. I felt like a vessel. In doing the research on things like the coroner's report, and reading the coroner's report told me that there were 12 shots, which said to me there will be 12 scenes in this play, and each scene will be constructed this way, and so it just manifested itself in a very, in a flow that I don't think has happened since I wrote this play.
What would you say then has been the biggest challenge today, just before I bring Pieter into the conversation?
The biggest challenge has been really taking an issue that is pretty severe and pretty intense and saying to a prospective audience member, this is a play about a young woman who was shot to death by the police, who was shot 12 times. But there'll be moments when you'll laugh. There'll be moments when you will join in and perhaps chant along with the character. There'll be moments of levity, but there will always be that moment of that intensity of the realization that there's a human being who is no longer with us.
Absolutely. Pieter, thank you for that, Prof, and setting that context. The collaboration there between the University of California and UJ. Talk to us about that, particularly given the subject matter.
Well, South Africa has very high levels of crime and violence. So for us, it was a natural partnership as a starting point to have these important conversations. And from a thematic point of view, that was the link. And from a format point of view, the University of Johannesburg often does interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work. So the marriage between something that is normally known for music and dance, hip-hop, with theatre was very interesting for us. So when we were introduced, I was immediately
Talk to us about that experience. Physical theatre mixed with dance. What experience does it have on the audience and what they're going to be taking in?
Well, I think it casts the net so much wider. And if you think about our specific audience at the University of Johannesburg, we've got lots of young people, and I think hip-hop
Yes, lots of young people.
Resonates with young people. So, yeah, I think that it will be an important and natural marriage between all of those things.
Prof Rickerby, let me bring you
Yes.
back into the conversation. The marriage of hip hop and spoken word in this play. Talk to us about
Yes.
how you fused all of those elements together.
Yes. So I am from that first generation of hip hop culture, and so when I started writing plays, those elements, those founding elements, MCing, breakdance, and DJing, were always a part of my work intrinsically.
Yeah.
And so when I sit down to tell a story, it will often manifest itself. It will say to me, this should be with movement. You know, I've created work where I've recreated life-size versions of hip-hop album covers. So through tableaus and through movement, you know, I've done that type of work. So when I decided to work on Dreamscape, I knew that this was about Maisha. The story
Yes.
had to be her story. And so I envisioned it as what I call a solo piece with accompaniment. So the vision was the hip hop elements were the MCing or the poetry elements, movement and dance, and then DJing or beatboxing as the accompaniment to the story. And so the fusion of those elements made it so that I could tell the story in a dynamic way, in a way that could still tell this particular story, but that would allow us to sit through an hour and 10 minutes of intensity.
What about the title itself, Dreamscape? How
Yes.
does that play into in relation to the themes, even Maisha's story at large?
Yes. When I sat down to tell the story, and I teach as well, and I always will tell my students, come up with a name. Untitled is useless. And so when I thought about how to tell the story based on the incident itself, which the young woman who it's based on, Taisha Miller, was, she was passed out in the front seat of her car. So she had either suffered a seizure or she was unconscious. And so I immediately thought, well, what if she is dreaming? What if she is aware of what is going on? And how can I use the dreams to try to liberate herself from what is happening? And so I just took the two, you know, the dream and escaping, and put those two things together. And so it just became the catalyst for the story.
It's a conversation starter about broader issues of social justice and activism at large. Just as we wrap up, Pieter, how do you think Dreamscape is going to be part of that conversation for broader society?
Well, you know, in South Africa, we specifically battle gender-based violence, and within the context of the university, I think that gives us a starting point to have that conversation with our students.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. Wishing you all the best of luck. Thank you for being part of your storytelling initiatives, but also to reflect and help us heal as a continent, as a diaspora, as a people at large. We're going to leave the conversation there for now. Dreamscape playwriter, Professor Rickerby Hinds, head of UJ Arts and Culture, Pieter Jacobs, chatting to us about the physical theatre performance, Dreamscape.